The wind cut through the city like a blade, sharp and merciless, pushing snow into the gutters and freezing breath into visible ghosts. People rushed past without looking, collars pulled high, eyes fixed forward, each person locked inside their own urgency. Near the subway entrance, where the concrete steps swallowed warmth and returned only echoes, a woman stood alone. Her coat was thin, frayed at the cuffs, her hands trembling as she rubbed them together for heat. No sign. No cup. No plea. Just silence and the cold. Across the street, a man paused. Ethan Cole didn't look like someone who stopped. His posture was straight, his movements economical, as if every step had purpose. Years in the Navy SEALs had carved discipline into his bones. He had learned to ignore distractions, to walk past pain, to survive by shutting down anything that slowed him. Tonight was no different. He had just left the Veterans Hospital, the familiar weight in his chest heavier than usual. It was his father's death anniversary. A day he never acknowledged. A wound he never reopened. Ethan saw the woman. He registered her presence the way soldiers do, fast, efficient, distant. Cold. Alone. Not his mission. He turned away. As he walked, memories pressed in like enemies in the dark. His father's voice. Old vinyl records playing late at night. A man who sang to hide his own pain. A man who never lived to see Ethan come home. Ethan clenched his jaw and kept moving. Behind him, the woman began to sing. It wasn't loud. It wasn't polished. But it carried something raw, something broken and real. The melody floated through the cold air, slipping between traffic noise and footsteps, threading its way into places people tried to lock away. Ethan froze, his breath caught as if someone had struck him. That song wasn't just familiar. It was impossible. His father used to sing it every night when Ethan was a boy. The same rhythm. The same aching rise at the chorus. A song no one knew. A song never played on the radio. A song that had died with him. Ethan turned slowly. The woman's eyes were closed as she sang, tears freezing on her cheeks, her voice trembling but steady with meaning. She wasn't performing. She was remembering. The world around Ethan fell away. Missions. Medals. Years of silence. All gone. He took a step toward her, and for the first time in his life, a Navy SEAL didn't know how to breathe. Soft subscribe motivation. If this moment already touched you, subscribe now, because what happens next will change everything. Ethan stood there, unable to move, as the final note faded into the frozen air. His heart pounded louder than gunfire ever had. Slowly, carefully, he approached her, every instinct screaming vulnerability, something he had trained his entire life to avoid. "Where did you learn that song?" he asked, his voice low, controlled, but breaking beneath the surface. The woman opened her eyes. She studied him, as if deciding whether truth was safe. Then she spoke. "From a man who sang when the world hurt too much," she said. A man who said music was the only way he knew how to stay alive. Ethan felt his knees weaken. She told him her story. How she had once lived in warmth. How she had loved Ethan's father. How illness took everything. How promises were broken by time and war. She had searched for Ethan for years, never knowing if he survived. The song was all she had left of the man who saved her once, just as she was saving herself now. Ethan listened. Really listened. Not as a soldier. Not as a SEAL. But as a son. When she finished, Ethan took off his coat and wrapped it around her without a word. He didn't care about the cold anymore. He had survived worse. That night, he didn't walk away. He called for help. He stayed. He remembered. And for the first time since his father's death, he sang the song back, quietly, imperfectly, but free. People stopped. Phones came out. Tears fell. Not because it was beautiful, but because it was real, and somewhere between the notes, Two broken lives found warmth again. Stories like this remind us why humanity still matters. Subscribe to the channel for stories that heal, inspire, and stay with you long after the screen goes dark. The night didn't end when the crowd slowly drifted away. It didn't end when the police cruiser arrived, or when a paramedic gently wrapped a thermal blanket around the woman's shoulders. For Ethan Cole, that night was only beginning. That he sat beside her in the back of the ambulance, hands clasped together, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor like a man waiting for a verdict. The hum of the engine mixed with the distant wail of sirens, but inside his head there was only one sound, the echo of that song. His father's song. A promise sung softly in a small living room decades ago, a promise Ethan had never realized he was still carrying. The woman's name was Margaret. She spoke it quietly when the medic asked, as if saying it too loudly might make it disappear. She was older than Ethan had first thought, lines etched deep by time, grief, and survival. Yet there was strength in her posture, something unbroken in her eyes. When she looked at Ethan, she didn't see a Navy SEAL. She saw a boy she once rocked to sleep when his father worked late. A boy whose laugh used to fill a home that no longer existed. "You look just like him," she said softly, her voice still hoarse from the cold and the singing. "Especially when you're trying not to feel." Ethan swallowed hard. He didn't answer. Words had never been his weapon. Silence had kept him alive longer than speech ever could. At the hospital, paperwork was signed, vitals checked, and polite reassurances were offered. Margaret was stable but exhausted, malnourished, worn thin by years of invisibility. Ethan stood there through all of it, refusing to leave. When a nurse finally asked if he was family, Ethan hesitated. "Yes," he said finally. "I am." The word felt strange in his mouth. Heavy. Sacred. Hours later, as dawn began to bruise the sky with pale light, Ethan sat beside her hospital bed. Margaret slept, her breathing slow and even, fingers curled loosely around the edge of the blanket. For the first time since he was a child, Ethan let himself remember. He remembered his father sitting on the edge of the bed, guitar resting awkwardly against his knee, fingers clumsy but determined. He remembered laughter when the notes went wrong, and warmth when the song went right. He remembered promises whispered into the dark, "I'll always be here." No matter what. Ethan had broken that promise. That he had left home angry, full of fire and pride. He had chosen war over reconciliation, silence over forgiveness. When his father died while Ethan was deployed, the guilt fused into him like shrapnel. He told himself the past was dead. That love was a liability. That survival meant moving forward alone, and yet, here it was. Standing beside his bed again. Singing in the cold. When Margaret woke, she found Ethan still there. He didn't pretend this time. He didn't hide behind discipline or rank. "I should have come back," he said quietly. "I should have found you. Both of you." Margaret reached out, her hand thin but steady, and placed it over his. "You survived," she said. "That was enough for your father. He always said the world needed you more than he did." Ethan shook his head, tears finally breaking free. "I needed him." "So did I," she said gently. "But we're still here. That has to mean something." That morning, Ethan made a decision that scared him more than any mission ever had. He took leave, not a day. Not a week. Indefinite. He found Margaret a small apartment through a veterans charity. He stocked the fridge himself, learned which foods she could still stomach, which songs made her smile and which made her cry. Slowly, cautiously, a routine formed, not built on orders or objectives, but on care. One evening, weeks later, Margaret asked him to bring the guitar. "I don't really play," Ethan said. "You don't have to," she replied. Neither did he. That never stopped him. So Ethan sat there, fingers stiff, heart open, and tried. The notes came out rough. Broken. Human. Margaret sang softly beside him, their voices weaving together, imperfect but alive. Ethan realized then that strength wasn't forged only in battle. Sometimes it was built in staying. In listening. In keeping promises long after the moment had passed. Before the song ended, Margaret looked at him and smiled. "You finally came home," she said. Ethan nodded, and for the first time, he believed it. Red Heart final message: some stories remind us that healing doesn't always come through victory, but through connection. If this story moved you even a little, please subscribe to the channel for more powerful, emotional stories about humanity, sacrifice, and hope. Your support keeps these stories alive.